Let's make something delicious. For this loaded potato soup, I have started with 10 to 12 slices of bacon, depending on how many you want. I've cut them into bite-sized pieces and fried them until they're nice and crispy. And now I'm removing them to a paper towel lined plate. At this point, you will want to turn your heat off. That way your bacon doesn't continue to get too crispy and possibly burn. Now you want to dump off this bacon grease, because otherwise your whole soup will be overpowered by the flavor of bacon, which sounds like it would be good, but not so much. And it also will be very greasy soup. Now after you dump off your bacon grease, there'll still be a little bit of residue on the sides, and that's fine. That's not going to overpower. But you want to add 4 tablespoons of salted butter to your pot. Now you want to melt this over a medium heat, especially if you are using enamel cast iron like I am. You don't want to turn your heat up too high, because it will start to brown or burn your butter, because these keep their heat like crazy. Now I highly suggest you save that bacon grease, because you can use that for anything. You can use it to fry potatoes in. You can use it for all kinds of good stuff, so I recommend not throwing it away. Once your butter is melted, you want to add about a half a cup of chopped onion. And if you've watched my videos before, you know I always tell you to season as you go. Now you want to saute your onions until they are starting to get translucent and starting to get tender. Now our onions are starting to get nice and translucent and starting to get nice and tender. So now we are going to add 4 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, because at this point you're going to start making a roux around your onions so that it will thicken your soup some. Now you don't want it to be gravy, you want it to be soup, so you want it to still be runny, but you want it to have a little body to it. That's why you're going to thicken it up with a little bit of roux. Now you want to let this cook for about a minute or so it gets that raw flour taste out of there. Now to this we are going to add 3 cups of chicken stock. You want to add it about a cup at a time and stir it thoroughly between each addition to make sure that there are no lumps, because you don't want a big flour lump in your soup. At this point you want to turn your heat down on about medium-low. Now all of our stock is in and everything's slowly coming back up to a bubble. You want to let it start slowly coming back up to a bubble. If you need to turn your heat back up to about medium, go ahead. Now we have 3 cups of milk. I am using whole milk. You can use whatever kind of milk you keep in the house. I do not recommend skim milk, and you are going to get a richer flavor if you use whole milk. And now, because milk doesn't come out of the cow seasoned, you want to add a little bit of salt, because the next step, you're adding the potatoes. And potatoes can suck up some salt. So I'm going to add a good bit of salt and pepper. You want to mix that in. And at this point, I would even highly recommend tasting the mixture to see if it tastes a little salty. You don't want it to taste like the ocean, but you want it to have a little bit of seasoning to it. Now you want 6 to 7 medium to large potatoes that you've cut into bite-sized pieces. The smaller you cut them, the quicker they're going to cook. So I highly recommend you cut them smaller. Now be careful putting this in, because it's going to splash you, so hold it down close and dump in. Now you want to stir this around and bring it up to a boil on about medium heat. And then we are going to put the lid on and let it cook until the potatoes are nice and tender. Okay, now we brought it to a boil on about medium heat. We turned it back to between medium and medium-low. And we covered it and let it cook until our potatoes were nice and tender, which took, if you cut them about the size I did, it takes about 20 minutes or so. A little over 20 minutes to get nice and tender. You will need to taste probably about 5 larger pieces of potato to make sure that they're all tender, because sometimes potatoes will cook at a different rate. So make sure you get about 5 larger pieces and taste them. Now we're going to finish this up to make it loaded potato soup. We are going to add about 3/4 of a cup, give or take a little, of sour cream. I usually err on the side of a little bit more because it makes it nice and creamy, and that tang just really sets it off. Now, if you don't like sour cream, you could add heavy cream instead, but it will thin it out more than sour cream will. Now, you want to let that sour cream melt into it, but you want to keep your heat on about low, because sour cream does have a tendency to want to curdle. So you want to keep your heat on about low. You don't want it to be bubbling hard anymore. Now, I did often stir the soup during the time that the potatoes were cooking because they have a tendency to want to stick to the bottom. So you want to take the lid off and stir it often. Now that our sour cream is all mixed in, you want to add in your crispy bacon. And I am adding 2 cups of shredded cheddar cheese. I am using extra sharp white cheddar. You don't have to use extra sharp white cheddar. Use your favorite. But just make sure it's 2 cups, which is 8 ounces if you are shredding it yourself like I did. Actually, Jason shredded this. Now you want to stir that in until your cheese is all melted in, and until you know that your sour cream is all fully melted in. Then you want to taste it for seasoning. That is very important because potatoes suck up a lot of seasoning, and your sour cream will suck up a lot of seasoning as well. So you want to be sure that it's nicely seasoned before you serve it to your family. I personally thought it needed a little bit more salt, but a lot more pepper, because I like a lot of pepper in potato soup. But that's your choice. Now, this is perfect for a nice cold winter day. It's a nice hearty soup for a nice cold winter day or a windy day like we're having today. So remember, come back next time to Angela K's Kitchen, where I take you from gourmet to everyday and everything in between. God bless. Now, once your bacon's melted. I'm melting bacon over here.